IVM.
Hello and welcome to Simblified, the show that is your passport to a world of largely useless trivia and facepalms. So today we are missing certain dome-shaped head outline in our podcast, which belongs to Chuck. And he messaged us about late in the night to say he's not going to be able to make it. So I can only assume that he has thrown lockdown fears to the wind and gone out partying, as is Chuck's nature of regularly doing so. But so we are Chuckless today, but we do have an episode. And before that, we have, more importantly, a profundity. So,
Yes.
Naren, do you want to take us off?
You know, it's becoming a constant battle these days to find profundities.
Yeah,
For
they're
some
drying up now.
Yeah.
We're really struggling right now. It's
family
like
groups
it's
now.
like COVID vaccine supply.
Yeah, and problem is families when they are most of the time they're wishing each other a birthday. That's what family groups are for, and completely obscure people who are somebody's third cousin twice removed.
Oh,
You know, and everyone has to. So if one person wishes someone birthday, everyone has to say happy birthday X. Otherwise, that person becomes marked for.
Yeah, but this is
review.
what's happened with family groups now. I think all the kids, in my family group especially, all the kids have shamed the parents so much that nobody's sending profundities anymore. In
Wow.
fact, what's happened is my aunts and uncles and all that have formed another group where they share profundities with each other, with the kids not around. So there is nobody to shame them to it. So that's
Wow.
really sad.
This birthday messages thing is amazing because there are uncles who actually sit and count how many each person got. So unless like the full tally has been met, then like this is where they send. So there is some family issue cropping.
If you have one of the uncles working at Infosys, he'll probably write a little program to sort of keep a tally. But if he works in it, he could be your uncle too. So I've got a supplier who supplies angles and channels and ISMBs and things like that to our factory. These things are structural steel members, right? So you would buy a I-beam or a C channel if you wanted to build a shed or something like that. And so we buy material like once, only when we want to build something once in a while. But every morning he sends me a positive, uplifting message, which I just I don't see because I don't check WhatsApp so often. So
he's
recently
supplying both your businesses, your podcast as well as your
so
factory.
now he's become the biggest supplier
Material
for
for
the podcast
both,
business. Yes. And they're nice, uplifting messages. So this one is: life and time are world's two teachers. Life teaches us to make good use of time, while time teaches us the value of life.
Oh.
Good morning and have a nice day. Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, this is a head
Only
scratcher.
thing missing in this.
Yeah, I know. It's like circular logic.
Yeah, this is one of the
Okay.
only thing that's missing is it doesn't have APJ Abdul Kalam's photo on it. So that generally means that
that
it's
is for
serious.
scientific analogies, Naren.
Oh,
that is
okay.
the code of WhatsApp profundity construction.
Oh, okay. So this is general. Okay.
Yeah, here you will have flower or child playing in rain
It is
or some
a
stuff like
tree.
that.
Yeah, it is a sort of a tree and a couple of people holding an umbrella or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Very poor.
It's the
very
same.
poor.
It's like there's a naming conventions, like design conventions. There's a manual of style. All of these things for
We know, right?
constructing.
In engineering, mechanical engineering especially, your drawings are full of conventions. It comes with a bunch of fancy symbols, and if you don't know what those symbols mean, you're in trouble because everything will be fine, and like 2 years later, something will happen. And somebody will ask you, what is this symbol? And you say, I don't know. It says, 2 साल से तुम supply करता है, तुमको symbol नहीं मालूम है. So you need to be patient.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that supplying note, and also the topic of today as such is vaccine passports. So we will discuss how this is a new document / digital certification that is needed. So firstly, let's look at as is norm, what is the full Christian name of a vaccine passport. There are different vaccine passports out there, but I'm looking at what is the larger vaccine passport. The important part is, while vaccine passport is a common name, what is being given out there is generally called what is an immunity certificate, right? It's an immunity certificate, immunity passport, recovery certificate, release certificate in different ways. So depending on the context, different Christian names, is both a paper and digital format attesting that its bearer is immune to a contagious disease at its very base. So similar to quarantine, public certification is an action that governments can take to mitigate an epidemic. So very simply, it is a way that governments can like say that, okay, you know what, these people are immune, they can be out in the open, they can mingle, but the people who are not have to stay away. This is a simple way they can manage this particular scenario. Now, this concept, what is most important to know is right now that vaccine passports or vaccine certificates, immunization certificates are definitely not new news. Right. These are not something that has been recently issued. In fact, anyone who's taken the route to the Chhatrapati Shivaji Airport on the left side, I don't know if you guys have noticed, there is a yellow fever hospital over there.
I've got there and I've taken the yellow fever one. Yeah.
There's a hospital exclusively for yellow fever.
Yes.
Wow. Naren, you've been there, so you want to tell us about it?
Yeah. So I went, I had to go to Africa for something, and this was in 2010. And I found out it was Uganda, and they said you have to have a yellow fever certificate. And this huge place is a pretty big building.
Yeah, it's massive. I don't know. It's right there on the route. You can't miss it. I was like, such a big hospital for yellow fever.
Yeah, and it's made for yellow fever. And even back then, there was like literally no one in that hospital. So you enter inside and it's an open hall. You don't see anyone. You sort of go around, nose around. There's absolutely no one. Then you know, it feels like one of those, you've entered one of those CIA things and you don't know what's happening. Then you hesitantly open a door and, you know, you don't know, a secret agent will jump out and take you to get more prison. But then after like hunting around, I found one person who like told me, I mean, didn't they tell you at school you have to come between 10 and 1? What are you doing here? So the entire building functions only between some 10 and 1 or something. We're used to that. Anyway, I went back and suitably castigated. I felt really ashamed. I went home and I told my mom that, you know, this is not going to be the same. Because you never told me this. You parents didn't tell me about this. It's never going to be the same between us. So then eventually I forgave them. And I went back the next morning and they gave me the dose. But this is basically my experience.
That's all this hospital does.
And why 10 to 1 and why? Amazing. And why, you know, it's probably written, I don't know, it's probably there in the civics textbook. We should ask.
No, there's some shady stuff going on there for sure. There's one Netflix series waiting to be made on what happens between 1 to 10.
Yeah. But they give you a yellow card saying that you got a yellow fever.
Yeah, so, it's called a carte jaune. Yeah. It's a yellow card basically.
Yeah.
And so that's actually that certificate of vaccination and prophylaxis, which is called the International Certificate of Vaccination. So it was in fact instituted in 1944 towards the end of the Second World War, where yellow fever, because of the Africa campaigns and all that stuff, there were a lot of soldiers contracting that. So they started it from there. And they were bringing it back to
it's
the mainland.
Supposed to be pretty lethal. I don't know what the yellow fever is, but it's a killer. That much I know. If you get yellow fever, you have very high chances you'll die.
And obviously extremely contagious.
Yeah.
So it's only restricted to certain parts of Africa. And so in this certificate, so till date, this certificate, the International Certificate of Vaccination, was largely used in terms of either anyone who is traveling to Africa or anyone who's traveling out of Africa to any of the developed economies and the advanced nations, in fact, even India for that matter. So you need to have that International Certificate of Vaccination. Also, alternatively, there's also like in the US especially, all children are required to show, parents of children are required to show proof that their kids are vaccinated against polio, against jaundice, against malaria, a lot of other different diseases. And those are like rubella, mumps, all of that stuff. So these diseases, the vaccination has been there. So you've had to show proof of vaccination for a long time, right? Other than the travel from African countries and out and all that stuff, you have never had to have like any other vaccine passport between like any of the other countries as such. There's no need to show any kind of medical these things other than like and I'm sure everyone's at some point of time ticked a box that said you have not traveled to Africa or contracted yellow fever.
Oh yeah,
right. You must have ticked it at boxes everywhere because that is part of norm now. But here is where now things are becoming a little different. We have the vaccine passport coming in for COVID-19. Now, clearly, COVID-19 is a global pandemic. So every single country will be affected by this, right? The thing is, the very first COVID-19 vaccine passport was introduced in, so obviously it was introduced in China, where it was not a vaccine passport as such, because there was no vaccine back then. It was basically an infection. So it was a recovery document where it was allowed those who had recovered from COVID-19 for 3 months after recovery could travel within the city and between some certain cities and stuff like that. So that was the very first one introduced. Post which the very first national vaccine passport, so to speak, was instituted by Israel. Now, Israel also is the country where the vaccination has been the fastest in the world. So they have given both doses of the vaccine to about 70% of their population. And they had done this, like they had reached 40 to 50% herd immunity, full vaccination by, I think, mid-March itself. So because of which they instituted what is called the Green Pass, right? Now, the Green Pass is something that was it was an app, a QR code. It contains the information. So the information readable from it is your name, your age, and the dates of the 2 vaccinations that you got, and also probably the batch number of the vaccine that you got in case of any other further tracking needed. Now, the Green Pass got extremely successful in Israel because, I mean, Israel is one of those countries with extremely low vaccine hesitancy, extremely high vaccine uptake, and people just went out and got as many, they got the vaccine and they were also okay with the vaccine passports. And now the vaccine passports are required not just for attending like stuff, but even going to a restaurant, attending sporting events, any kind of indoor events that have more than 5,000 people, stuff like that is where you need the vaccine passport. And independently also a lot of private businesses are demanding the vaccine passport scans as well. So that has been an extremely successful, non-controversial program completely that when it began. But since then, the matter of vaccine passports has started getting played up, especially when it came to the US. Now, the US becomes an interesting case study because it's the place where, it's the most polarizing place as well as the most federally regulated. So you're literally living in 2 different countries inside the same country when it comes to different states. So New York and California, obviously the most Democrat of states, the bluest of states, introduced a kind of vaccine certificate. In fact, New York has already introduced something called the Excelsior Pass.
Wow, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, it sounds like some kind of platinum card.
Yeah.
Like you get that black card that you can swipe and get exclusive access to shit.
Which
actually it is.
Yeah.
So, except for exclusive access, it's just regular access where everyone else is denied. So the Excelsior Pass, what it does is that it allows for you to access the gyms and all that stuff. It also contains that basic health information. The Excelsior Pass captures one of these 3 things. Captures a full course of the COVID-19 vaccine, negative PCR test within 72 hours, and a negative antigen test within 6 hours. So what it does is it can either track whether you're vaccinated, previously infected and recovered, or gotten a PCR test that shows you have no COVID. So it is inclusive of all those 3 things. So, and therefore allows you to kind of like attend. So the biggest thing that this Excelsior Pass is used for is right now in the US, it's playoff season. So all their sporting leagues are going through a playoff.
That's the weak point. Yeah.
So they are going through this thing. So I personally am following the NBA right now, and it is incredibly. I feel. Sorry?
NBA. Okay, I thought
NBA.
Okay.
So,
as opposed to an
don't
NBA.
follow it. I finished my MBA. That is ancient history.
For non-regular listeners of Simplified, if you want to trigger Srikeit, you just talk about American football and he will start becoming very violent. Yeah.
No, funny enough, I started following it to some extent. But anyway, that's another story.
But imagine following the MBA very closely. You wake up at 6 a.m. every morning to keep
That
track
was what
of.
Pagal Guy was.
Oh, damn. Yeah, that's,
Following MBAs very closely.
does it still exist?
Fetishizing them. I'm sorry?
Pagal Guy is still alive and well?
Yeah, but it's, I think, migrated to few other things. It's
See,
like,
this is when you know you've really aged, when like no one on your timeline posts a message saying, yeah, I got into MBA or something like that. Like, now you've
Yeah, I
passed
know, man.
that phase of...
like a decade ago, like getting into a B school was everything that was important in life. Now you're like,
it
I
still
went to
is
a
for a
B
lot
school
of people,
educated.
just that we've aged significantly. Now my greatest joy this year has been that I managed to get a haircut this last month.
And
How the mighty
this,
have fallen.
yeah. And it's so ironic, right? You're great, you're terribly happy you got a haircut, and there are so many lenders who are not happy they got a haircut. So
yeah.
Different strokes for different folks.
Distressing. Okay.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about Excelsior. It sounds so much like a wise old man with a big beard who specializes in spreadsheets. So.
Wow.
Oh man.
This is surely someone's LinkedIn job title, right? Excelsior, SEER. Yeah.
Oh man.
Like after ninjas and mavens, now we go to like Seer. Brilliant.
Oh my god. But anyway, coming back to the NBA, the National Basketball Association. Naren, your MBA, I don't know, your MBA certificate must be like tapering some cracks in your factory or something. No?
I will, I think we should take a break now, but on the other side of the break,
while you go get the certificate.
I'll just see if I still have that. So see you on the other side.
So let's take a quick break and see you on the other side.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Would like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Srikeit and Global Victoria. Thank you so much for making this possible. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by the hilarious and extremely charming illusionist and therapist Suhani Shah. They talk about different aspects of magic like sleight of hand, mind reading, mentalism, and more. The Habit Coach completed 500 episodes, 500, and Ashton has a special message for us on the occasion. Do check that out. We had Lekini Desai, founder of the India Ethnic Company, talk to Varun Digarala about their story and the Hatke marketing idea that made them popular. On Naan Curry, South Africa just celebrated World Chocolate Day. They took us through the origins, history, economics of chocolate, and shared their memories. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshav Chaturvedi shares an interesting story from Leh. Check out an updated version of the Traveling Professor's Diary. It's now rechristened as Smarter with Sid. Same old brain filled with news stories and insights. This time, listening to know why you should keep things simple. And finally, check out Global Victoria Tech Talks. This one is in partnership with Global Victoria, the trade arm of the Government of Victoria and Australia. The edtech and gaming industries are booming in Victoria, Australia, and this series is meant to showcase that. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Welcome back to Simplified, where we bounce back with the NBA vaccine passports and hopefully Naren's MBA certificate.
Yeah, so it's well known that except in moments of duress, I don't admit that I've got an MBA. Very ashamed of the whole thing because I was such a terrible MBA student. MBA is all about wisdom and knowing things and very amorphous. I'm terrible at all that. Yeah, and I just didn't get it at all. The only thing I got a little bit of was we had a course on statistics, and that's about it. But I passed, and then I found out it's not like engineering. They generally, you waffle, you write any nonsense, and they pass you. And but I didn't. And then 25 years later, we had a grand reunion and everyone met and all, everyone's become captains of industry and there is me like footing around doing nothing. And then I thought that, maybe if I had collected my certificate, I would also have been a captain of industry like all these other people.
Captain of industry.
And I went to the university, and lo and behold, my degree certificate was there. It was all 25 years. They had carefully kept it. Every day, the registrar would personally seal it with a little kiss and put it back into the safe. It was there.
It's
It was
like
so touching.
Excalibur. Like,
Oh man! Wow,
you're
with all the
waiting for
X's
today.
Yeah, so that's
But
the story
so
of
they gave
my-
you your certificate 25
No,
years
they didn't
later.
give me. There was some. I still didn't collect it. There was some technical requirement. I had to fill out some form and give some idea. I didn't have all of that.
But you
So now
saw
I have
it.
to
It was
go
there.
back. Now it's 30 years since or whatever. I passed on 88. So 33 years.
It was
Oh wow!
there.
It is 8 years since that happened. Yeah, but
Yeah,
probably.
but
Yeah.
Naren, didn't you know you had to go between 10 and 1? What is that?
Touche, yeah. Probably that was it.
Incredible.
So,
But
Srikeit,
anyway.
the vaccine passport is technically like just for like internal domestic use.
So no, not at all. So in fact, that's where these vaccine passports. So like in the US, especially, it's right now for internal domestic use. In some ways, where like say in sporting arenas, they are using. So only in New York and California, they're using that as because like I said, the NBA is going on and stuff like that. So in the playoffs, the arena's full of people, and masking, obviously, according to US regulations, is optional.
Yeah.
Right. So they're full of people. So especially in these two states, when the matches are happening, the games are happening, they are required to kind of scan their Excelsior pass or any other vaccine certificate to get in. But in the rest of the US, it's not even required. In fact, a lot of the states in the US have actively banned any form of future vaccine passports as well. So as all things have happened, this thing has gone down ideological lines as well. So the Democrats are in favor of vaccine passports. The Republicans are saying it's a form of oppression. So in Texas, in Mississippi, in Missouri, these states, vaccine passports are banned. And in fact, in some places, like in Kentucky, they also tried to pass a ban that prevented businesses from asking for a vaccination to admit people into there, but that got defeated. So at least for public spaces as well as government installations, it's banned. Like you cannot develop a vaccine passport at all. Like you can't even propose it at this point in some states. So that's how it's gotten down ideological, because as everyone's favorite Q conspiracy theorist, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's the female Trump. She's worse than Trump. Like she's like full cuckoo QAnon conspiracy theory lady. And she's a congresswoman, obviously, as US does. She said that the vaccine passport is a form of corporate communism.
Corporate communism.
Yeah. So I can't think of a better oxymoron, like corporate communism. But
so there she's saying it's a red card, not a green card.
Excellent. So she's like, even some polls are showing that the US population is divided on vaccine passports by political and ideological lines, rather than any other thing. But as you asked, Tony, is it there for international usage? Right. Yeah. And here is where the most interesting thing comes in. Only just last week, the European Union approved a EU digital COVID certificate. Right. And now they have actually instituted into like travel across the entire EU and including regulations for people coming into the EU, the Schengen area. So what they have done is this vaccine passport is basically in effect from 1st July, and it allows for like people who have, but this is truly just a vaccine passport. Within EU, it is also a passport that shows recovery from COVID and swab tests and all that stuff. But from outside the EU, you have to show a proof of vaccination to enter.
Yeah.
And in this case, there is a bit of controversy on this because they actually released a list of vaccines that are authorized by the EU that will be recognized. Now, in that is Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca. Although this is where it gets really tricky and interesting. AstraZeneca is made by two different companies.
Yeah.
Right. There is one is Vaxzevria and the other is Covishield, which is made by Serum Institute in India.
Yeah.
Right. Both AstraZeneca overall and both these versions got approved by the WHO. Aadhaar Poonawalla and the Serum Institute team did not bother to apply to the EU specially for any permission.
Okay.
So the EU has only approved Vaxzevria, even though they are both the AstraZeneca vaccine. So Covishield is not part of the approval list.
He didn't go between 10 and 1. Oh, man.
So,
but then, I mean, there was also a statement from the government saying if you don't approve it, then you will have to come here. And I mean, if you come here, we'll check you and stuff like that. Right?
Exactly. That was brilliant. Saying that if you don't this thing, we will also not approve your vaccine. But despite our, so because of our grave threats, 5 countries have said that they will admit Covishield, 5 EU countries.
Yeah.
The rest, I mean, they're still in the process of, I mean, over the next couple of months, it's assumed that it will get the Covishield approval because it's approved by the WHO.
Yeah.
So there's just some bureaucratic lag at this point. But eventually, they will also include these vaccines as part of the pass. So the EU countries have already issued their vaccine passport system, and there were a lot of private contractors also that were running like their own vaccine passport systems for private companies and stuff. But it's assumed that the Green Pass will subsume all of them to some extent because they normally want one universal authority that issues it and controls it. So, and obviously not to be left behind, the Chinese government also has rolled out like a partial vaccine passport system, which is of course run with a partnership between Alipay and WeChat, as expected, as everything from China goes through WeChat. Their vaccine passport system also only accepts Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, despite the fact that the Sinovac, which is the Chinese developed vaccine, still does not accept it as yet. So their rollout is still
what do you mean by
slow.
partial vaccine certificate?
So, I mean, they still haven't, it's not accepted everywhere. It's not a countrywide vaccine system. It's only been rolled out.
It's not like the case in India where you have only one dose and then you're waiting for. It's a really funny thing, right? Like basically Covishield has got approval, but no one's got the second dose.
Yeah.
Covaxin people have got the second dose, but like there's no
there is no approval.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, this is going to be those logic puzzles, you know. One of the logic puzzles is going to be this.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah.
And also, I mean, with the mixing and matching, there's all going to be like home brew versions of vaccines. Like I put a little Pfizer in there, a little Moderna in there, some Covaxin, Covishield was mixed, and some haldi, of course.
Jokes apart, I really don't know how the pandemic is going to go away without people being vaccinated. So really, all over the world. I mean, it's not just country A and country B. And if they think that they've vaccinated their own countries and the problem has gone away, it doesn't, because as long as the virus gets a chance to reside within human beings, it's going to constantly mutate. And mutation is completely evolutionary, right? So you have a million mutations, they all die out because the vaccine is stopping all of them. Then there's one mutation with the vaccine system and that spreads and takes over the entire world.
And that's where it becomes a really tricky thing. So like in the US, actually, with their federal system and stuff, and even in India, the problem is there is not enough vaccination. In the US, there are certain states and certain cities which are highly, like around 90% vaccinated. And then there are Central America states which are all not vaccinated very much at all. So in which case, that's where it becomes a challenge, because not only because in the US, they're kind of painting the vaccination as a choice, right? And so, but what happens is the people who are unvaccinated may get infected, and with the infection, there is that chance of mutation. And because of which, what happens is you can't institute a vaccine passport system where you don't have at least some level of herd immunity or some level of overall this thing, because the vaccine, while people who have the vaccine can be carriers, who have taken the vaccine can be carriers, they cannot, at the current moment, the science shows, they cannot let the virus mutate, because the virus needs to grow inside and like spread inside you to be able to mutate in some way. So, but the thing is, if they are infecting people who have not, and if those people are mingling with the people who are vaccinated, the variant can be very easily created. So that's where in India also, I mean, that strategy of letting everyone just get infected and then go through it, with the number of people that we have, there definitely will be variants that will come out. And as we saw with the Delta variant, and
I don't think it was a strategy. It is just like
no, but in the UK initially they were suggesting herd immunity as a strategy, right? So and then some politicians from India agreed with it because that was easier way out.
Yeah, because
But-
we heard of it. It was herd immunity.
Oh, wow. But anyway, the other officially instituted vaccine certificate of sorts was actually instituted early in 2021, was not by any government or country, but by the IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association.
Yeah.
So they had proposed a digital app to authenticate COVID tests or vaccination status of travelers as well as staff. So this was actually a lot of leading airlines like Qantas Air, New Zealand, Singapore Airlines. All these guys signed up with this IATA vaccine, this thing. So actually the air traffic staff is actually among the most vaccinated profession in the world, because they are all about 90+% vaccinated as such. It becomes a prerequisite to kind of travel by air. So whether you go to a country which has that requirement or not, getting into an aircraft, you'll need your vaccine certificate.
Yeah, that was the pilot program for.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
What a beautiful one.
I wonder under whose stewardship it was.
Oh, even better. Wow. With Chuck missing, even the quality of the puns has improved. I hope he's listening. Hi, Chuck. Screw you for not attending.
Yeah.
But of course, and here is where the discussion can happen to some extent, is where what the arguments and controversies are around vaccine passports, right? Obviously, there is a thing about with vaccine passports, there is immunity. There is one guy called Sam Rainsy who mentioned this point about saying that we are actually creating a commodity, a resource of naturally acquired immunity as a resource. So it's something that is going to be coveted, that could even be monetized.
Yeah.
Right. So what he's suggesting is that if I'm going to issue vaccine passports for access to places, that creates a black market for vaccine passports altogether. And that creates a market for like, how do I get my vaccine certificate? How do I get those antibodies in my system? All those different things, which also some other guys also initially encouraged when these vaccine certificates were introduced or immunity certificates were introduced before the vaccine passport or were discussed then. It was talked about how a lot of people actually deliberately look to get infected so that they could have that immunity and then that access and stuff like that. So there is that big argument. But on the pro side, there is there was another very, very dystopian argument by a UK member of parliament. And I will read it verbatim because it's a very interesting but very dystopian argument to it. So I'll summarize there, saying that checking of COVID status is one way of almost authorizing certain people access based on their health status. Now, that could open a door to finally allow the state to restrict the overweight's access to certain dining facilities and high-calorie foods. Upon entering a restaurant, the business could scan a mobile phone app that showed your BMI. Those within the healthy range can order the full menu, but those who are overweight could be restricted to ordering certain size-limited portions. As for the obese, they could be asked to settle for a salad or simply asked to leave. Takeaway orders such as Just Eat or Deliveroo could use the same data taken over the telephone to weed out the obese from placing a fast food order. In supermarket, your BMI status could be scanned at checkout and fatter foods would be removed from your baskets and replaced with healthier options.
This is like one of those old blog posts where you have those what if scenarios.
And also,
it's like a Black Mirror episode.
So touchingly old world. This is someone who's probably got a family inheritance, doesn't need to work. Which business in their right mind is going to tell paying customers all that? The entire fast food industry is predicated on the fact that people are going to eat garbage and you just feed them garbage because that's what they want. Don't tell them, what are you, every dietitian? you give grease, you give them lard, you give them everything. But this guy, he feels that.
But one question, domestically, it's very easy to sort of have a fake certificate, right? Like if you're going to a sports arena or something, essentially you're showing a screenshot or an app or whatever. Right?
I mean, the only places that are mandating the use of this is New York and California at the moment. And both of those places are using digital certificates. And their vaccination is directly linked to the digital certificate. So there's no real way. I mean,
but in an arena where
hacking.
In an arena where 20,000 people are entering,
you can't digitally check everything. You just show it and you.
you have
No, I think there's a
give the
QR
owner
code scanning. So that's how the vaccine thing works.
Okay.
So as part of your ticket, you take your ticket and then there is a barcode scanner over there. You scan the QR code and get it.
The United States just hates being ID tagged and asked to carry papers. They just...
Yeah, but that's where the states have South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Utah, Florida, Texas, and Arizona.
South Dakota, I read something by Dave Barry a long time ago, which said that South Dakota is so sparsely populated that if you just drive into the state, you automatically become a member of the legislature, something like that. So I don't think South Dakota really counts.
Yeah, so, that's where these guys have banned like instituting vaccine passports altogether. And so that's why there is no national federal rule of any sort, right? Now, federally, in fact, even they announced that you don't need to wear masks anywhere in any... So other than private businesses can ask for you to wear a mask. But besides that, it's like terrible. So that's what is so ridiculous. It's so funny. As I was mentioning while watching the NBA, there were fans in the stadium. The players obviously aren't wearing masks because they have to play. The fans, a lot of them, especially in Utah or any of these states, are not wearing full capacity crowd. No one's wearing masks. But the worst part, the cheerleaders who are coming to perform are performing with masks. And I felt so bad for them. I was like, because they are part of a union of some sort and they're part of like employee this thing. So all the performers who are there have to all wear masks and perform. Like there was a guy who was singing and he had his mic stuffed inside his mask. And he was performing and singing through it. And I was like, man, these guys. And imagine doing it when the rest of everyone you're performing to is nobody's wearing masks.
Yeah.
So it was quite like ridiculous, and you see some of these images out there. So
but even in the Euro and Wimbledon, basically it's capacity crowd and no one's wearing masks, right? So,
yeah, that's true. So I mean, there also it's largely because of the whole. Everyone's vaccinated. There is some sort of vaccine passport entry over there, so they require to show proof of vaccination or test or whatever. The other thing that was also there is that there's also an argument about social hierarchy. So, for example, firstly, access to vaccine may be restricted, and those who are either have limited access to vaccine, plus there is a whole bunch of people, like people with multiple sclerosis or people with different kinds of diseases who cannot get the vaccines, right? So the other concern with the vaccine passports is also like almost it's furthering that class divide. There are a whole bunch of people who don't have either access to vaccines or there are because of socioeconomic reasons. And other thing is there is also a large number of people who cannot get the vaccine because they are either they have some kind of disease like MS or they are immunocompromised in some way. And those people cannot get vaccines and they will be denied access to different places as well. And also what it does is that because of this vaccine passport system, there is also a thing about certain places like the EU, they are only recognizing people who have received a vaccine, but people who have been infected are not getting recognized a lot. And so because of which that also becomes a barrier. And finally, the other barrier being it infringes on personal choice. So if you have decided not to get the vaccine or if you cannot get the vaccine, you have to spend out of pocket to get that swab test and all that, which are not cheap. I got one and it was super expensive. So it was like as expensive as they are, you have to pay out of pocket to get all of that, which a lot of people may not be able to. So at the moment, that's where the main criticism of vaccine passport is that they're still in initial stages. There has not been a vaccine passport system that's been initiated, which is not for either extremely wealthy, advanced countries or only restricted to very privileged populations, like people who can attend sports arenas in the US and stuff like that. But at the moment, there is no vaccine passport system that's truly inclusive. And till that happens, I don't think there can be a universal vaccine passport that does not exclude a large portion of humanity in some way or the other. So, so that's that. Any final words, guys? Anything to add?
No, I mean, we just would like to tell all Simplified listeners that it's, everyone please stay safe, stay passported and stay simplified. Yeah. And see you next week at the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, host of the Empowering Series podcast on the IVM network. I happen to be a peak performance coach and leadership coach by profession, and I'm here to share with you productivity tools, life-altering techniques, and real-life hacks to help you achieve your maximum potential in everything you do, your relationships, professions, careers. So tune in every Monday to unleash your inner power. Be safe, be well, be empowered.
2020 is a difficult year. A global pandemic, protests, elections, recessions. You get the picture. What we need is a space where we can have nuanced discussions about global affairs and foreign policy. That's where I come in. My name is Hamsini Hariharan, and I host the States of Anarchy podcast. Every second Tuesday, I speak to experts in the field of international relations to make a little more sense of the world. So join me on the IVM podcast app, website, or wherever you're listening to me right now.